Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 2, Episode 2 of Leverage Redemption. Another great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I do appreciate anytime we get to learn more and more about Sophie's past, and I think that is such an interesting thing, especially that gets brought up in this episode, because Sophie brought up this interesting thing where she was like, right, everyone in this team's kind of got their past and their secret, and then Elliot made this reference to like, right, first it was me and then it was Parker. With the Elliot, I can only assume it's the Damian Monroe stuff of like the stuff, because once again, like the worst thing he ever did in his life, he did for Damian when he was working for Damian Monroe. And I'm assuming with Parker, it would probably be the stuff with her dad when like her dad like asked her to do a job for him because he was being like threatened, and Parker went at it alone. I want to say that might be what that's in reference to. But it's like, yeah, we've all had to like kind of come to terms with like our past and kind of, you know, like we have to kind of be honest with each other. Yeah, we all have things about our past we don't talk about. We were, you know, and I think this was like Sophie's episode, which stuff from Sophie's past has obviously come up. Like obviously like an old ally of hers obviously came after her in season 2. Well, that ended up being Chaos that like tried to kill her, but still she crossed paths with like a former partner. I don't think that's the boss that she's referencing in this episode. Obviously, this is like way, because she even references later on. It's like it's way early in her career, like when she was kind of starting out. But basically, initially, she was helping out this woman, Dee Dee. Like, her family kind of does, like, I think it's mainly like a shrimp thing. Like, they kind of do like, a lot of catching of, like, seafood stuff. And that's their livelihood. It's been a thing in their family for, like, 100 years. But the problem is there's a lot of, like, plastic and pollution in the waters because this guy, Heyman, basically ends up getting around some legal stuff and handling things illegally, where he's basically just dumping a whole bunch of plastic. And she was trying to bring it to the surface, but he basically came after her, basically blew up their boat. This is attacking their livelihood. You know, for her, it's just like, right, she just wanted to get the right people to listen, and they did for a little bit, but it just wasn't enough attention drawn to the situation. So she asked Harry for help, and Harry introduced her to the team. And so the whole point was to basically you find out that basically he has like a whole bunch of hidden like things that he's keeping insured. So the whole point is to I think the plan was to make him get caught. Well, I think eventually the plan shifted. I don't remember what it originally was versus what it ultimately ended up being, but the point is to basically get him, like, find out where he basically stashes all his stuff, and basically get him caught with the trash and stuff like that, caught with like what he's actually doing, I think was kind of the point. It's been a couple hours since I saw the episode, so I'm not remembering it as correctly, so that's kind of on me. But the snafu that Sophie runs across is that she runs into, was it Arthur Wilde, a former colleague of hers from like way, way back in the day, and he went to prison because of her. So he holds a massive grudge against Sophie because of that. So it ends up being this thing where Sophie wants to kind of bring him into the fold, because it is her way to kind of make up for the past. That's what it is. This is kind of like her redemption, you know? It's her chance to make up for the past, but like, right, if I can it could be a win-win. We take down Hammond and make things right for Dee Dee, but at the same time, we also slide some of the money from this situation and make sure that Arthur gets a really big cut, because he's doing his own con and stuff like that. So it's like, right, Sophie, stay out of my way. I don't trust you. I don't want to work with you after you screwed me over and landed me in prison. And we find out, once again, it's early in her career. She was running with a crew. Arthur was such a good forger, but the problem is they kind of were on the borderlines of being found out, because one of his forgeries ended up getting found out. And so their boss told Sophie, let him take the fall for it, because this is when she met the Duke of Hanover, And because, like I said, I know that identity came up before, but last episode I couldn't remember what it was necessarily connected to. Because I even do love that Arthur was like, "Oh, what are you now?" Like, "Oh, your Grace," calling her that because he knew her as like when she was the. I guess even back then is around the time she created the identity of Kiki, because we learned about that last episode, but he brought it up this episode, so it's like he knows probably like a lot of her earlier identities and stuff. So, but obviously the Queen, like I said, I definitely remember it from the original series, but it's also interesting to know like she's had that identity for such a long time. Like this was a long time ago she had this identity, and obviously it came up during the original series. Like I said, I feel like it came up at least once. I know it came up at least once, but I want to say maybe twice. Once again, do correct me in the comments down below. Like I said, my brain's a little foggy right now about that, but it does sound very, very familiar. Like that's why I was confusing it with the identity where she was eating the chocolates and stuff. But I was like, I'm pretty sure that wasn't that, but it could be. Like I still don't remember off the top of my head. So her initial plan is to bring Arthur into the fold, and I love this conversation where like she's like, right, she owes it to Arthur is why she's doing all of this. And it's like, right, are you sure you can trust him? I understand why you're doing this, Sophie. And then Harry asks a big question at the end. He's like, no, you're not going to get any judgment from me considering my past. But he asks, like, when it's all said and done, can you, like, when you have to, you're going to ultimately might have to choose between Arthur and helping out Dee Dee. Which will you be able to, like, do the right thing when the time comes? Like, choose Dee Dee over Arthur, or will your guilt about the past kind of like play into that? So I was always scared the entire episode. I'm like, oh my god, he's going to end up like betraying Sophie and everything. But like, cause when the gun first got pointed at him, I thought like, oh my god, he's going to like rat them out or something. But he didn't. He kept the con going. But also, I wasn't worried about the gun because if you notice at the beginning, like when Sophie first meets with Hammond, she clocks the gun on the table. I'm like, they already switched out the bullets or something. They did something like so. It was, and especially the way Sophie was acting in that situation when Hammond first had the gun on him, I'm like, there's no way like that like the way she was acting was like, yeah, they already dealt with the gun, so it wasn't even a concern. So they had Elliot play the role of like a corrupt FBI agent, and I love that swagger he just came up with him and being like, oh, like you're going to give me a 40% cut, and like the mimicking of the shotgun. I even love when he went out the window, he was knocking on it, he does the shotgun thing again, almost waves his hands like, I'm just kidding with you, I'm messing with you, haha. I'm like, I love that character for Elliot. But I also love that he brought up McSweeten, and I did not rewatch season 1 of Leverage Redemption, so I feel like I remember them referencing McSweeten last season, but maybe they didn't. If they did, I'm sorry. Do let me know in the comments down below. And even if they did, it's still pretty nice to know. Like, hey, McSweeten's head of the counterterrorism unit. I was like, that's pretty dope. It's nice to know. It's like that. Very true to his name. He's a sweet guy, and you're just like, yeah, McSweeten. I want you to have all the success in the world. You're a really good guy. So, especially because the last time we met him in the universe of this show was, to my recollection, like his final appearance in the series was like in season 5, the whole DB Cooper thing. I think it was the last time he popped up in the show, to my recollection. I could be misremembering, but yeah, I thought that was kind of a neat little thing of kind of throwing McSweeten's name out there. So. I also love, obviously, Harry's doing the whole Chechen thing. I'm like, did he ever do any accents last season? Maybe he did. And I love that, like, Brianna and Parker were not fans of it. And also love, like, Parker being like, oh, act normal. And then she's up there being like, oh, using it like an Irish accent, talking to people. Like, oh, let's go out for drinks or something like that. Also, we found out she's never been to the dentist. At what her reasoning, honestly, it's like, yes, it's Parker. She's batshit crazy. But there's also like, like from a criminal standpoint, it's like, why would I go to the dentist for them to have my dental records? No. And then Brianna has this disgusted look like, oh, you've never been to the dentist? But I'm also from a criminal standpoint, like, it seemed like, oh, it makes sense. What's also kind of an issue too, because you're like, how many cavities do you have? Because like, Parker can really chow down on some sweets, We've seen her like get super, super hyper after eating a whole bunch of sweets. But that was kind of very specific circumstance. That might have been like, it was like, I think they were in Sweden for a job and she ate a whole bunch of chocolate. So that might not be like an everyday thing. That might have just been that one time, but But I mean, it's probably just a thing of like, she probably takes very, very good care of her teeth just for the purpose of, I don't want to go to the dentist because I legally can't, because I don't want them to have any principle. Like, once again, her reasoning made sense, and like, oh, it's Parker, but it also makes sense. Not just in a Parker makes sense type of way, but also just a general criminal way. You're like, oh, it makes sense. So. But I was scared, like, later on. I was like, the moment Hammond got, like, a call on his satellite phone, I was like, Arthur sold you out. And I was like, damn it. I was like, yeah, and he's trying to be squirmy because she's immediately throwing him under the bus. It's like, yeah, he's been selling you like some fake art. He's like, no. She's just trying to pass the buck to me. But Hammond eventually stopped listening to him. And Arthur was like, oh my God, I'm gonna kill you and stuff like that. Because like I said, at that point, I was like, oh, he sold them out. He's no longer part of the con. I knew when he got shot, I was like, no, he's not dead. That's part of the ploy. They switched out the bullets. I thought it was a nice twist when they revealed that he was actually still a part of it. Like, even him throwing them under the bus was all part of it. I'm like, oh, he actually sold that really well. Like, the whole like notion of like, oh my God, we're being like, oh, she's playing you, and oh my God, okay, this whole thing's a con, spilling the beans in general. Like, that's why I was like, oh, he's trying to save his own ass, like, obviously, but he really played that out really well, so it worked out in the end. I also loved Harry being like, oh yeah, it was my first death ever, so he got to fake his death. And I love that he was asking him, like, oh, so what should I fake? Should I fall forward? Should I fall backwards? And Ellie's like, just die already. Shut up. Just do it. So I love that. So I thought that was pretty dope. But ultimately they ended up getting Hammond out there on like the shipping container, the place with all the boat with all the shipping containers, but all his like they found where all the stuff he had, like, he was smuggling into the country and stuff. They found the container with all of that and basically sent one of that barge with like just a container of garbage, and he was left out there while his satellite phone was being drained. So yeah, it all kind of worked out in the end, and they were ultimately able to help Dee Dee like fix up her boat, and they also helped get news attention, because that was something Brianna really wanted to push for, because Sophie had talked about, like, right, they can't change the world, but what we can do is help one person at a time, and maybe that person, like, can kind of pass it, forward, like, so all we can do is a little bit at a time, and then we can look back and see how much we've changed. That's all we can really do. And Brianna wanted to do more. I even love that. I think it was he was eating pad thai, and she shamed it because she's like, "Is that?" He's like, "No, it's recyclable." She's like, "No, they had to basically put it in the machine. It's not recyclable. It's the lie that they ended up telling you." And she's like, "Oh, like, does that taste?" She's like, "I hope that tastes like shame." And he's like, "Well, it does now, I love that." And he's like, "So what should I do with this?" She's like, "Oh, it's yours for life," or something like that. Kind of like, I love that she guilted him and not even want to eat his food anymore. It's like, yeah, Brianna's like passionate about that stuff. It's like, yeah, protecting the earth and everything, And I just thought that was really neat. I also love Parker being extremely bad at reading lips, and Elliot Sarah being like, "No," and then she's like, "Oh, are we going to say it was parrots?" And he's like, "No, it's pirates." He's almost like, "What? Why would you even think parrots? Just use context clues would have told you he meant pirates, Parker." But for Parker, once again, batshit crazy Parker, it's like, oh yeah, worried about he could tell people parrots though, because probably in her mind it's like, yeah, parrots are probably evil enough birds to do something like that. So, but what I do think is so interesting that, yes, at the end of the day, Arthur got his cut of the money, but the thing is, he's like, oh, this is here you are going to apologize. She's like, "I am sorry for the choice I made back then. I was young and inexperienced." But he's like, yeah, no amount of money or apologies is really going to make up for it, because he's like, I know what you want to pretend like you've changed, but he's like, I know who you are. You're still that same person underneath. Like, you have people fool. And he's like, yeah, like we're not settled, we're not even, but whatever. But the fact of the matter is, there's plenty of people out there who you've cut their legs from underneath them. Which, having not seen the trailer, and I don't want to know this, but I feel like the way they set that up kind of implies that there probably will be more people coming out of the woodwork. Because, yeah, because there was even in the final season that painting. It was an episode, because it was around that time, like, Nate was with Sophie, and they ended up crossing paths with Sterling about like a painting situation, and the painting ended up being about Sophie. It was a painting of Sophie. I think that was at the same time Hardison, Parker, and Elliot were in Portland. It was kind of a terrorist situation that they were involved in. It was it Adam Baldwin's character and his connection to Elliot. I want to say it was like that episode, because that was like one of the times they weren't around each other. Like, those were like two separate episodes that were basically happening at the same time. if I remember correctly. So that's like one of the last time like Sophie's past kind of came up a little bit in the original series. I'm fairly certain that was season 5, if I'm in the final season, but either way. But I think that is obviously a little harsh for him to say that. Like, obviously, he's got a lot of hard feelings when it comes to Sophie, so obviously he's not going to be so forgiving towards her. But like I said, that does set up some really interesting stuff about, like, yeah, like Sophie, I thought it was interesting because she also brought up like having Harry around was nice, because for her it's like Nate's biggest issue is that he would never acknowledge his blind spots, and she's aware of her blind spots. She's completely aware of them because, like, you know, Nate almost, I mean, especially a lot of the times, both when he was drinking and when he wasn't drinking, and then when he was like trying to find some middle ground for a lot of the show, you know, it was that thing of he kind of treating himself kind of like a god, because it's like, yeah, I'm the man who have nothing to lose. I'm the man who can't lose. I'm the man somewhere in between, you know, not completely stop drinking, but I'm not drinking as, you know, so it's that space where he was in that situation where it's like, hey, I need to, he would never admit his own weaknesses, and she sees her blind spot. She likes having someone around that can kind of point her out and to kind of call out when she's kind of, you know, straying a little too off the path. So that's why she's kind of happy to keep Harry around, which I'm almost like, are they, like, I wasn't sure they were doing that last season. It feels like maybe they are setting up a whole Sophie and Harry thing, because it's been a couple years for Sophie since she lost Nate, so she might be tiptoeing in that direction of having, you know, maybe it's not even at this point yet. Maybe she's not quite ready to have a full-blown dance partner, but someone to do a little bit of a two-step with right now, you know, might be what's kind of necessary and what she needs. So that, I feel like that'd be kind of a nice overarching story. I think it could be what they're leaning into, especially with the way they set it up last episode, that she's very much like Nate when she came to planning, and now you get this episode. So having not seen episode 3 yet, I don't know what that's going to necessarily pertain to, but obviously, like, an overarching story plot was like Harry's redemption, and so I think this could be like Sophie's redemption in some regard. So, but I also love that Brianna, because there was a conversation she had with Brianna at the very end of the episode. It's like, okay, so why didn't you tell us about Wild? And Sophie said the line of, well, you know, like, right, you can't let your past hold you back. You got to just kind of find a way to move forward. And I think there is a little bit of, she felt shame and she didn't want the crew to know that there was a situation where she betrayed the team. Like, I think that's one of those things, just those big regrets in her life. Because she even admitted to Arthur, like, hey, I ran away and wanted to kind of like leave my past behind and forget like the mistakes I made. It's like, right, you grow from your mistakes, you change. Whether Arthur believes it or not, Sophie is not the same person that she was before. Like, this team, this family, like, changed her for the better. Everything she's been through has made her a better person in the long run. So she isn't the same person, but I think for Sophie, she probably is scared that somewhere deep down inside. And I think especially for a grifter, that's a complicated thing of just like, right, you know, because she went on a journey of kind of self-discovery in season 2, just trying to like find herself again. So I think you could, yeah, it's like, yeah, there's that part of Sophie that's always going to probably be like, you know, you that she probably like enjoys losing herself in the grift because it's easier than being herself with some of the stuff that choices she's made in the past. Because even that whole situation, she had even admitted the reason why she didn't want to like because her boss at the time, like with the whole Duke of Hanover thing, was like, hey, keep your identity clean. That's why you need to sell Wild out. But part of me is like, there was also, because she realized, she was like, oh yeah, the Duke of Hanover, he was very sweet, and so I think it was like, that's why she even admitted at the time, it's like, yeah, I was young and it was complicated, because it's like, she was young and she also didn't want to destroy this identity because she loved it, and because I think everything with the Duke was so nice. I think it probably was legitimate love, despite the identity she had created and everything, so. But I did love that line from Rihanna being like, right, kind of using Sophie's words back at her, saying like, but it's important to remember the past because you can look back and see how much you've changed. And so I think that's going to be an interesting kind of thing for Sophie to kind of be dealing with over the course of this season. I don't think that's just going to go away this episode. I think that is something that's going to continue forward with the character going forward throughout the season. But I think that's kind of a dope thing. And once again, I'm always excited to learn more, like, because Sophie is, to me, especially as a grifter, it feels so befitting for her to be like the biggest enigma on the team, because everyone else, like, we know their deal, but she's always been kind of a little bit of the biggest question mark because of, and it helps with her being the grifter and everything. It really kind of leans into that aspect. So I'm excited to see where episode 3 ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.